if you are on the big side of social media such as BookTok, Bookstagram, or BookTwitter, you will probably have seen posts such as this one, or this one. And you will probably be asking yourself, why do big readers, writers, or publishing houses basically spoil the whole book into a post? Well, it's a kind of worms, but let's talk about it. I'm ready to open it. I would say before we start to get into the juice, into the debate, we need to get the history and the facts straight and ask ourselves, what is actually a trope? So, by common definition, a trope is a very common used theme or topic, especially in literature. So, for example, enemies to lovers, or time travel, or they shared one bed. Those are very common tropes that are being used right now, or that are very in tone with 21st century trends. Another question that you might ask yourself is, when did tropes start being used? And I would say that all the research that I've done is quite inconclusive, in the sense of we don't really know when tropes or when trends start and finish. But I will go one step ahead, and I have to say that I believe tropes have been used since humans start telling stories, not only by literature or writing stories, but also orally. So let's go back in time and let's say, for example, ancient Greek history or ancient Greek stories. So there's always common trends within these stories, which is a heroic figure such as Heracles or Achilles, a villain, which is usually a god or an evil woman such as Circe or Hera or Zeus, and then even monsters as well sometimes. But then we also have a damsel in distress like Penelope or Arachne or any other women that were in that era. Another question that also pops into my mind is, why are tropes used, or why were tropes used in the past? So in my opinion, I think that tropes were used to teach a lesson, especially for children when you were telling them stories. So one example, for example, of a very common story is Red Riding Hood, right? Everyone knows it. I think it's such an international or such a key story that everyone, or the vast majority of cultures, know. And basically the main story, or the main point of the story, is for children to understand that they can't or they shouldn't trust strangers. And I think that is a very common trope of like legendary or like old school stories, which is not to trust the strangers, because the evil person or the villain usually is a stranger. But, and there is always a but in these stories, I would say everything changed with fan fiction, for the better or for the worst, however you want to think about it. But in my opinion, I would say that fan fiction has changed it for the best. And also, I am 1,000% sure that fan fiction is single-handedly one of the best inventions in literature, with like altogether with the writing press and scripture itself. And this is a hill that I would die on, and you can't like not pull me down from the post. But fan fiction is way more valuable and has changed literature way more than what you actually think. And for example, one of the main things that people have to talk shit about fan fiction is the fact that it's so new. But actually, you are wrong. Fan fiction is older than you think, and one of the best examples of fan fiction comes from the 17th century, who, first of all, let me just bring my Spanish accent. So Alfonso Fernández de Avellaneda wrote the sequel of the Don Quixote even before the author, Miguel de Cervantes, actually wrote it. So it actually counts as fan fiction in the 17th century. But obviously the fan fiction that we have as of now and the fan fiction that we have in earlier centuries are completely different. And the one that we are talking as of now is first started in the 1960s, 1970s. Thank you to female creators from the Star Trek fandom who basically created fanzines, is that how you call it? I'm not exactly sure how you call it, but yeah, created fanzines in order, and that were sent via mail, not via email, via mail and via post towards other people that were also part of the fandom. So those were the ones that actually brought fan fiction into life, and then it was later popularized and it was just mass produced in the 2010s, I would say. Obviously, with the popularization of fan fiction, thank you to the internet, we received two main things. So the first factor that we have to take into account of, like, thank you to the popularization of fan fiction, was mainstream media just taking more and more fan fictions and turning them into normal media, such as 50 Shades of Grey, for example, After, or The Love Hypothesis. That is one book that many people know nowadays, but they don't really know that it was a fan fiction, and it comes from Star Wars, actually, which is great. Like, I love that. I love creative people getting into the literature world. Thank you to fan fictions. That is chef's kiss.
The flavors are melting on my tongue.
And the other side is that thank you to the internet and thank you to these safe spaces, everyone had the ideas or that wanted to create fan fiction, they just put Dumpty over there, and then you ended up having hundreds of thousands of written media that was available to you. The problem with this is that obviously you have great options, but you also would spend way too much time trying to, like, go into the scripts to find the kind of media that you wanted to read, right? So this is where the tags come in, right? So let's say, for example, I don't know if you have ever been into one of these websites or if you have ever read fanfiction itself, but how it works is that if you go into a website, let's say AO3, right? If you go into the searcher and just put what you're interested in, let's say One Direction, if you put One Direction, you would have thousands of fanfictions that you can read. And obviously you can read them all, but not everyone has the time. So what you would do is just to put certain tags or like specific tags that you wanted to read about, so then you would get less and less fan fictions that were more catered to your needs or to what you wanted. So let's say, for example, instead of saying One Direction, you put Harry Styles, and then you put reader as a way to just get a relationship or like get a fan fiction that talked about a relationship between Harry Styles and you, for example, the reader. And then you will put more specific tags like romance, for example, or enemies to lovers, like a trope that we talked before, and then you would find what you exactly are looking for. But obviously, because we are human, sometimes we can't have nice things and we just slowly descended into madness, I would say.
I'm fucking crazy. But I am free.
Obviously, it just depends on the person, and it just sometimes people have different tastes and different likes, which is fair. But some of the tags can be quite concerning, I would say, to the least, right? Obviously, you do what you do, boo, and I am not the one to judge because I've also read some weird things. But this is where the tags and the importance of the tags come in, because sometimes tags were used as a trigger warning, as a way to just just advise people not to read if they are not interested into those specific tags. Let's say, for example, pregnancy, which is a very wild but also quite tame kind of tag. But yeah, just basically these tags were used as a trigger warning for people, just to for the writer to let readers know that these would come into the fan fiction one way or another, and if they didn't want to read that, they just could just scroll by and just go on to the next fan fiction. Also, you have to take into account that there are certain fan fictions or certain tags that I find very concerning. Like, I don't even think if I can say it out loud, but let's say, for example, Omegaverse, that's something that exists as well. Blood as like Lube, well, no, not a V, but a V, which I think is wild. And then CNC as well. Those are things that also exist. So there's fan fiction for everyone, but not everyone should read adult fan fiction. Please, please, if you're a minor, do not look around what CNC is. This is a trigger warning. Like, this is a serious trigger warning, okay? Like, kids, do not. And now we're getting into the juice. So obviously we talked about what tropes, what fan fiction, what tags are, but why do publishing houses, or why do influencers, book influencers, put the tropes or the tags into the social media, into advertising those books? Like, you're literally quite spoiling the whole book. Well, I would say that this is very much related with social media itself, because obviously there's a lot of research about it, but if you don't really know, social media ruins your attention span. It ruins your attention holding system because of all these like dopamine hits and dopamine releases that you get from scrolling and just to reading and finding and looking at videos that are just catered to you. Thank you to the algorithm. So how it works, let me just recapitulate a little bit how social media works in general, especially TikTok, especially TikTok and especially Instagram Reels as well. So obviously there is an algorithm in every social media that just caters the content that is available on the whole social media itself and caters it to your likes depending on what you liked, what you sent, what you commented on. So everything that you interact with is feeded into the algorithm and sends you or like shows you even more content of that thing, right? So in this sense, for example, let's say TikTok, you have videos that are 8, 10, a minute long, more or less, and you basically, if you like that video, you just like it and then just scroll on to the next one, and then this algorithm is fed, right? So you have like every 15 seconds, let's say, a different video that you are liking or disliking, which is something that like fits into your attention holding system, in the sense of like you have every 15 seconds you have something new, you have novelty, right? Which is a dopamine release already, which the dopamine is a protein. Well, it's not a protein, it's how do they say it? A dopamine is one little thing that just feeds into your brain and just activates the reward system and just makes you happy, right? So if you have dopamine, for example, it's just a way to reward you for your actions, right? So in this sense, for example, if you keep scrolling and if you get like all these release of dopamine, you just will keep scrolling because you're liking the video that you're seeing because of the algorithm, and also you are liking the experience of like constantly scrolling and getting the novelty, which absolutely ruins your attention span because you don't have to wait to get the dopamine release, you just get it immediately, right? So with this, it obviously makes sense that fellow readers or publishing houses or even writers themselves, they just portray in social media the main points, like the main concise points of the books that they want to advertise, in order to get these people or like to get these users that are just in and out, like they just want to dip their toes into the social media post, for example, and they just get the main information and then just deep out, right? So in this sense, you have these communities. So let's say Bookstagram, BookTok, or BookTwitter. You have these small communities that are into this side of the algorithm in order to get certain kinds of information, which is books basically, or like the book community in general. So what, let's say, what a writer does is they just bring the book, they just put it over there, and they just say like, look, these are the tropes that you guys like, buy my book, right? Or like publishing houses do that as well. So it's like, these are the book that we have now, these are the tropes, this is what you can find in this book, like it, want it, buy it, and then just go to the next one, right? Which just feeds into the cycle of micro trends, and also into the capitalistic cycle of wanting, buying, right? And that is something that I thought I would never ever see in literature, like in literature and like art in general, but apparently that's something that we're seeing now. As a conclusion, you will see all these books advertised as just the main tropes that you can find in the book, as a way to bring attention to all these people whose attention holding system is absolutely ruined, just as a way to get the quick attention to the post, and then, or to the book specifically, and then just generate this interest, and then basically like enhancing the chances of the person buying the book itself, right? And you might ask yourself like, what is wrong with that? Like, you just get this immediate like release of attention, of saying like, oh yeah, I actually want this book, I'll just get it immediately, or I'll just get it when it gets released, and then just go back to another kind of book that I want, right? But I would say that that is not a great thing. That is not something that we should strive for, right? Like, we first of all, I would say, I don't want to sound like a purist, or like I don't want to sound like a fucking boomer, because first of all, I am not, and I don't like boomers themselves. But I would say that we are writing, or like we are reading, or we enjoy literature as a way to pass the time, as a way to expand our knowledge, and as a way to just basically get an emotion out, or many emotions out of the books that we're reading, right? And like, we are reading because we enjoy it, right? And I think the vast majority of the people that just go into these micro trend tropes, or like they just read very specific trends, they just do it as a way of getting that dopamine release instead of actually enjoying the book. So let's say, for example, someone that is obsessed with enemies to lovers, right? Like, everyone likes a very like a good enemies to lovers. I'm not gonna take like knowledge of that, like everyone loves them. But someone that constantly and only reads enemies to lovers fan fiction, or media in general, so let's say literature, right? Like, they are there for a very specific reason, which is dopamine release, and they are not actually enjoying the book itself, they are enjoying the trope, which there's nothing wrong, but I think it's a way of minimizing the art of literature and the art of the writer that spend hours, that spend their time actually writing a good book, or writing a book that they think is good. Something that I also forgot to mention is that publishing houses will 100% see what trends, what tropes are trendy, and they will just force, or try to enforce, that all the media or all the literature that they are publishing have these tropes in order to get more sales. Which, if I think about it, right, if I think it economically, it makes sense. But you also stripe of other people's opportunities, or other writers' opportunities, to actually publish a really great book that could be the next, I don't know, the next Carrie, or the picture of Dorian Gray, just because people are too focused on these very specific tropes that are now trendy. So, as a final statement, first of all, if you are a reader, please diversify your reading content. You will never know if there are other things outside the tropes that you read that you like, because you have never given them the opportunity. Second of all, you're also supporting other writers that have other ideas, or that are writing about different things, just because like you are so obsessed into those specific tropes that you're not giving them the opportunity. So also support other writers that are outside your trope box, I would say. And C or three, as a publishing house, also please diversify your like the books that you publish, because I'm not gonna lie, I'm just quite sick of seeing the same five tropes everywhere, and just like having it like just having it on my face. Okay, like I love a good enemies to lovers, or I like dark fantasy, but it's always the same thing and I grow bored. So just diversify your content, like everyone in general, diversify your content, and you might find something that you like even more than the tropes that you're reading, or the tropes that you're portraying, and that is giving you money, period. That is all for today. Thank you so much for listening to me and for watching this video. If you would like to have any discussions, obviously there's the comments. You can follow me on social media as well, and I am always so happy to discuss this. And if there's anything that you think I missed, please also let me know. I would love to know other people's opinions about this. So thank you so much for listening and for watching, and thank you. Have a great day. Bye.